Hey everyone, in this video, we'll be looking over rate cards and understand how to use them. So rate cards are a way to specify transportation costs for different lanes of transportation in which the cost changes based on distance or drop size. And the reason we use rate cards is because a lot of transportation or third-party logistics companies quote their costs through such a system. So instead of you having to manually look up the different costs based on drop size and distances and specify them individually, using rate cards, you can automate this process and make it easier. Alright, so to use the rate cards, you need to enable them first. You can do this through the configuration wizard, which you can access from the data navigator. So in step 12 of the configuration wizard, there is an option to include rate cards. To include rate cards, just toggle this button and now you will have the option to define rate cards in your Excel spreadsheet. Apart from that, there is also an option to use a different unit for the drop size of the rate cards than the base unit. To do so, just toggle this button and now here you can define another unit for the drop sizes which will be used for the rate card. So this is how you can actually include the rate card functionality for your spreadsheet. So after enabling the rate cards in the Excel template which you will receive, there should be a spreadsheet called rate card data. So this is the place where you will actually define all the characteristics of your rate cards. So before defining your rate cards, you need to actually go into trans type definition and define each rate card as a separate mode of transport. So the network design app lets you use rate cards for all modes of transport, whether it be from the suppliers to the production facilities, or from production to the CDCs, or from the CDCs to the LDCs, or from the customer. So each and every lane in your model has the opportunity to use a rate card. So in this example, we define one rate card for each of these lanes. So the inbound raw materials rate card will be used for calculating transportation cost from the suppliers to the production facilities. The primary transport rate card will be used to calculate transportation cost from the production location to the central distribution centers, the CDCs, whereas the internal transfer rate cards will be used to calculate transportation cost from the CDCs to the LDCs. And finally, the secondary transport rate card will be used to calculate costs from the LDCs to the customers. So like this, for each lanes, you will have to first define the rate card as a mode of transport. So after defining your rate cards, you now actually have to create them using bands in the rate card data spreadsheet. So as you can see, for each and every rate card, there are certain bands defined. So for example, in the inbound raw materials rate card, we have defined 10 bands, and each of these bands are associated with a certain drop size and distance limit combinations. So for example, Band A1 will be selected if a supplier sends their shipments in loads between 0 to 30,000 units and if they are located at a distance between 0 to 250 kilometers away from the production facility. Whereas band E1 will be selected if the load is again between 0 to 30,000 units, but they are located 6,000 kilometers or more away from the production facility. So like this, for each rate card, you have to specify such bands, and please make sure that your drop size limits and your distance limits are continuous. So for example, it has to be 0 to 250 and then 250 to 1000. It cannot be 0 to 250 and then 251 to 1000 and then 1001 to 3000. This will give an error. That's why make sure that the bands are continuous. And for each bandwidth which you create, you also have to specify certain costs. So the cost can be either in terms of per THU, or they can be fixed cost per trip, or they can be per distance, or they can be minimum cost per trip. So this is how you create different bands for each of the rate cards. So after creating your rate cards, there is still one another attribute which needs to be specified to use them, and that is the drop size. So the drop sizes can either be defined per location or they can be defined per lane. So to define by per location, if you want to do it for customers, just go into the customer product data sheet. And here for each customer and for each product, or you can also do product grouping, you can specify the rate card drop sizes here. And to do so for other locations, you need to go into the product location data sheet. And here you can specify the other locations, which means it could be the raw material suppliers, the production facilities, or the CDCs. And again, similarly, you can define the rate card drop sizes here. After specifying the rate card drop size, the next thing which needs to be done is to set up the rate cards as lanes of transportation. To do that, go to the transport cost data sheet, and here under mode of transport, you need to enter every rate card which you have created. And then you specify which product or product group you wish to ship using these rate cards and the from and to location and the period and the handling unit. After that, the only cells which you need to fill is the available and retrieve distance cell. Please do not enter any data in the cost cell because for these rate cards, you have already defined the costs in the rate card data sheet here. So if you again fill a cost in the transport cost data sheet, it will lead to an error. I mentioned before that you can specify the rate card drop size either per location or per lane. So if you wish to specify the drop size per lane, then you can fill the drop sizes here. So for example, if you wish to fill the drop size for the primary transport rate card, which means from the production facilities, then you can specify some value here. And now from every production facility, this is the load which will be sent to the CDCs. But please remember that you can only specify one drop size per lane, but if you specify a drop size here, then you will have to remove the drop size from the product location data sheet for the production facilities, because right now for the production facilities, two drop size are being specified, one here and another one here, but this will lead to an error. That's why if you wish to use the drop size here, then you will have to go and delete it over here. Only then will it work, otherwise it will lead to an error. So now let's actually see the functioning of the rate cards in the network design app. So what I did is I saved the Excel template as a data set using the data navigator and opened it here in the network design app. So to quickly explain to you guys the situation in this example, we have four suppliers marked by blue. We have two production facilities marked by purple. Then we have two CDCs marked by red. We have four LDCs marked by yellow. And finally, we have 8 customers marked by green. So what we're going to do in this example is use late cards in all of these lanes. So if you actually go to the adjust transport data workflow, you can see that all of your rate cards have successfully been loaded into the network design app. And for each rate card and their band, you can actually check the distance associated with them, the drop sizes, and the cost. And one other good thing is that if you wish to change the cost, instead of going back to the Excel, you can just quickly change them here. You can just double click like this and input a new cost. And you can actually do the same with the drop sizes for the customers. If you go to adjust demand / lead time, here you can see for each customer their demand, their lead time, and their rate card drop size. So let's say you want to run multiple scenarios in which you want to change the drop sizes for customers. All you have to do is double click on one of the customers and input the new rate card drop size. So now let's actually try to optimize this model and see what happens. So the model was optimized, and now let's have a look at the results. So as you can see, certain lanes have been created between each of these locations. And the transportation cost between for these lanes is actually calculated using the rate cards which we have defined. So if you go to results details and go into transportation report, you can very clearly see which rate card bands have been selected for each of these lanes. So in this example, which is secondary transportation between Madrid and Cervell, there is a distance of 534, and there is a certain drop size associated with this product at this customer. So based on that drop size and this distance, a rate card of bandwidth B2 is selected, and the secondary cost is calculated based on all the costs defined in bandwidth B2 for the secondary transport rate card. So like this, you can actually verify if the right bands have been selected and validate your model. In this example, each and every lane has correctly selected a rate card. So as you can see, the network design app is able to take in the rate cards and select the right bandwidths and give out the right costs based on the drop sizes and the distances. So now we will look into some errors which might show up when you're creating the rate cards. So I filled data into the Excel template and uploaded it into the data navigator and got some errors. So let's have a look into them. So there is an error that an average load size is missing, and there is an error that there are transportation modes where both rate card and normal transport cost have been specified. So if we look back into the Excel template, what it's basically saying is that these mode of transport are defined as rate cards, but then there is also cost filled into them as regular as normal mode of transport, and that's why it is also expecting an average load size which is missing. So like I mentioned before in the video, when you have created the rate card, all the costs for the rate card are filled into the rate card data sheet. That is why you are not supposed to mention any costs in the transport cost data. You only use the transport cost data sheet for defining the lanes of the rate cards, not defining the costs of these lanes. So make sure that you do not have such costs here. Then another error or warning which we see here is that it says that there are lanes with transportation mode where there is a certain drop size and distance, but there is no rate card which matches this combination distance and drop size combination. So to give you guys a better idea, as you can see, if you look into the customer product data, you can see that the range of the drop size is as low as under 4,000 and as high as 7,000. But if you go into the rate card data, you can see that what happened in this rate sheet is that the lowest limit of drop size for the secondary transport rate card is 4,000. So it will only be able to assign cost if the drop size for the customers is 4,000 or above. But as you can see, we have some customers whose drop sizes are below 4,000, and hence this combination will not be selected, and this will lead to an error. That's why make sure that your rate card drop size upper and lower limits and distance upper and lower limits actually meet the requirements of the drop sizes of the customers or suppliers or the lanes, and also the distances between all these locations. So instead of 4,000, it should be 3,000. So now I'm gonna save this sheet after fixing all the errors and just upload it again in the data navigator. So as you can see, after making the changes in the Excel sheet and fixing all the inputs which were causing an error, there is no more there is no more data issues now. So whenever you're using the rate card functionality, please be careful to not have such errors. So thank you so much for watching this videos, and I hope that now you will be able to use the rate cards in your network design app.